just a great story about these kids and what they had to live through and how resilient they were despite it all, and how with a little bit of encouragement they could achieve great things.
Through the bars of their visors, each made a demi-vote and retired.
Interest taken by the spectators. This encounter
the heart of the film really is in the children and their strength and their spirit in these extraordinarily adverse circumstances.
Stand up, 743, or you'll know what for.
I love the character, I love the script. I know a lot of people, probably everybody says that, but when I read the script, I mean, it's a long time since I've been so angry reading a script and moved.
I think it's got a real quite magical feel to it, and I know a lot of the actors on it really believe in it at the minute. I think it's really going to work.
It's such a devastating story that it brings with it a kind of responsibility. You have to find an attitude towards it.
Life can be very unforgiving.
Can it?
It's a story that should be told, for years and years and years. And I've spoken to a lot of people that have, been through that system. Those kids cried for help and never got it. It's a story about a man who's come back to Ireland, having been away in Spain for fighting during the Civil War, and realises in 1939 in Ireland he's fighting very much the same battle that he fought in Spain with the Catholic Church.
And he comes back to Ireland, and because of the stigma attached to that, has a very difficult time getting a job, and finally lands one as a lay teacher in a reformatory school.
Oh, Mr. Franklin, is it?
Yes.
Yes, well, come in. We could do with a little paint. Because Franklin is the first lay teacher to come into the school, and he's obviously a man who cares about children and cares about teaching. I hope you'll be very happy here, Mr. Franklin.
So do I.
You're the first lay teacher we've had here, and God knows we could do with a change.
Oh.
Franklin has a great love of poetry, has a great love of nationalism, as a freedom seeker.
What's someone like you doing in a place like this?
Why do you think I'm here?
Because you couldn't get a job anywhere else.
Sit down, Mr. Peters. Have we any serious questions?
You haven't answered the first one yet.
I'm here because I'm a teacher and I think I'm a good one. Now!
For sure, he was in the Spanish Civil War on the Republican side. He fought for the Internationals. He's had a lot of mental trauma from what went on with him in the Spanish Civil War.
Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
He's come to teach the boys English.
So anyone else can't read or write?
And realises very quickly that the vast majority of the kids in his class and in the entire school can't read or write.
I can see I've got my work cut out for me.
He starts to quickly see some of the abusive behavior that goes on with the brothers, in particular the prefect, played by Iain, Glen, Brother John.
Go on off with you. Let this be a lesson to you.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
It's Brother John, who's played by Iain Glen, who's, I suppose in its simplest terms, a religious zealot.
And he sort of perpetrates violence, really, to make sure that they stay in their place, because his instinct is that if they're not met with a strong hand, then they will rebel. So the best way is to make sure that they live in fear of that violence and knowing that if they step out of line, then they're going to really physically suffer for it.
I asked you a question, 743. Was it you?
No.
There is no need for that. How dare you, Mr. Franklin? You have made a very, very big mistake.
So he slowly but surely goes to war with the establishment, trying to defend the kids that he has grown to feel great affection for.
It would have been quite possible to have arranged a peaceful and honorable settlement between Germany and Poland.
So it's war, Mr. Franklin.
The story is kind of about how the kids are pulled either way by these two sort of polar opposites.
Let me give you some advice. The creatures you are going to teach, if that is the word, are not to be confused with intelligent human beings.
He intuitively feels that this guy is going to be disruptive, so he's initially suspicious of them, and then, you know, their confrontation builds to a climax at the end of the film.
Remember, you have Mr. Franklin to thank for this midnight assembly.
The character of Iain Mercier in the film, who's a 14-year-old boy, is very, very similar to Franklin. That's what they recognise in each other. They're both fighting that system.
Iain Mercier, well, he doesn't trust really any adults because his mummy died years ago, and his daddy was a drunkard and never took care of him. Doesn't listen to any teachers. He hates everybody in the school. Doesn't want to take any interest in anybody but himself.
What's your name?
Iain Mercier.
Stand up. Can you read?
Yeah, and I can write too.
Then I suggest you teach Peters. They butt heads immediately, as you would with someone as rebellious and defiant as Iain Mercier's character is, but quickly he sees how smart and canny and interesting and poetic.
What's it like being in love, Mr. Franklin?
Why are you asking?
Do you think it'll ever happen to me?
Of course it will. Why wouldn't it? People watching films, if you have great characters to care about, it's very universal.
But they're all brilliant. I think the kids will be the making of this film, and they've all been really well cast, and they're all really good actors. So.
Oh, terrific! They're splendid because they're not drama school boys. You know, they come from some of the rougher areas of Belfast and Dublin, so they're not calculating in that way.
It's not very good to write your own name. It's better if you know to do that.
A lot of humor, a lot of wonderful moments in the movie that are not acty at all because they haven't acted. They're just basically playing themselves.
And you just see those kids coming to, really growing in the presence of Franklin, who you see what, happens when a teacher arrives and starts to open up parts of them that they, never knew existed.
From now on, Delaney, you'll be known as 743. That's the number allocated to you and you alone.
At the start of the film, he's just arrived in, so he doesn't really know anyone.
Goodbye, Delaney. You know it's best you keep your mouth shut.
But then Franklin teaches him to read and write, so he starts to open up to him a lot about his troubles in the school.
Iron, prison, doors. I think I know it, but then I forget.
Keep trying. Slowly does it. You get there.
The most difficult part to cast, because obviously I had met Chris Newman and I knew he could play Delaney, he was casting Mercia, because it's such a crucial role in the film, because if it doesn't work, you're dead in the water. And we went to Dublin, Limerick, Cork, all over the country, went to Belfast. And then I had this notion that we'd get quite tough kids in boxing clubs.
So we're looking for like a tough sort of fella from a boxer. So boxing sort of got me into the film. My trainer took me to an audition.
I remember the day he came in, he had a hat on, he had his anorak on, that walk that he has that's like a little boxer, those big hands, and I thought, you know, if this child can act, this is him.
I will not yield. I will not fall. I will eat dynamite. And one day, I will explode like a volcano.
What does that mean to you?
I'll fight all the bastards that are against me, like you did in Spain.
Once the initial kind of shakedown happened, where they kind of killed each other for the first few days, they, you know, they all helped one another brilliantly as well, you know.
A lot of the boys haven't actually done acting before, and they've adjusted just fantastically. They researched their characters and, you know, how they had come to be in a reformatory school, and they were really enthusiastic about it, and they're very concerned about would my character do this or not, and they try to stay in character all the time, which they do achieve, I have to say.
Peters?
Fine, sir.
You're welcome.
Rogers.
Delaney? What's the matter, Marshall? Don't you believe in Santa Claus?
Thanks, sir.
Do you?
Fortunately, we had people like Aidan Quinn and Iain Glen and all of the cast, effectively, who have done it more for their own reasons than necessarily doing it for financial reward.
Well, we sent the script to Aidan, I mean, at least 4 years ago. And we came close on 2 occasions before to making the film. With actors like that, because he works a lot of the time, you've got to find a gap. And we had a gap last September. And then September the 11th happened and we were, you know, gone. And fortunately he hung on, you know. And rightly so, because the part is his. When you see him, there is nobody else that could have played that part. When you see him there, you know, he is it.
Aisling Walsh she's big-eyed, intense, got a big heart, very soulful, and I think she's always intense about getting it right. But in a way that's, you feel very supported as an actor.
And Iain is somebody I've worked with before and whose work, you know, well, like Aidan, I really admire.
I really like the script. I think she's a great director as well. When I knew that Aidan Quinn and Iain Glen were doing it, I thought, yeah, that sounds great.
I liked the story. It was a tough story. It's a dark story, but I liked that it dealt with those issues and didn't pull any punches with them.
I had faith in you.
Not Jesus Christ. I haven't got answers.
What you've got, Mr. Franklin, is a talent for teaching.
What I have is a talent for letting people down. Now, if you'll excuse me.
When I got the script, I loved it the first time. I loved the script, I loved the character.
The big issue was really getting the cast, and Aidan came on board a good 2.5 years ago, so that started that process. And then it was a question of getting a sales agent, because that drives everything. If you know who's selling the film internationally, you know you're going to get the other finance on board.
The financing the film is a 4-way co-production between the United Kingdom, Denmark, Spain and Ireland.
Two-way marker. He's been ruled by
I mean, I have to say, I think it's probably one of the best crews, if not the best crew I have ever worked with, bar none. There isn't a single area on this film that in any way has been a disappointment.
Pretty much everybody here is blown away by the material. The performances are superb, and I think we have something very strong on our hands.
People will go through that but come out with a great deal of hope, will love those characters, and in that respect, I hope they'll enjoy the film. But, you know, there's a lot of emotion along the way.